Gentlemen, we are having an epidemic of fraternity suicides across the country. It hasn't made the news because nobody cares. I mean, nobody cares if a fraternity brother takes his own life. You don't hear about national news. You don't hear about it in the local news. The college campuses rarely report it, but I'm telling you because I see it on Instagram, we are having a crisis right now, and it's almost like universities don't even care. And we have got to do something to help each other thrive and live and survive. And you guys have got to do a much better job of checking in on each other and creating contacts and an environment in your fraternity where being okay is not where not being okay is okay. I'll say that again. You got to create an environment where not being okay is perfectly okay. And especially for you guys in the South, you don't have to be happy. You don't have to always have a nice thing to say. You don't have to struggle in isolation and feel like you're a burden to somebody just because you're having problems. And across, I saw this especially last academic year across the South. We had a lot of guys die. A lot of guys died from two reasons. One was drug overdoses. I'm going to do a separate video about that. But then secondly, too many men taking their own lives. And what's the common posting that you see, right? In fact, I have one right here. This is from this is one that really got me going from the Chi Psi fraternity at the University of South Carolina. I want to read this. This is August 17th. With deep sadness and heavy hearts, we relayed this message. Last week, one of our brothers, Ian Gux, tragically took his own life. He was a 4-year member of the fraternity, a brother who always had a smile from ear to ear, bringing hard laughs and joy to all that encountered him. A brother that was selfless and never gave anyone a hard time, a simple man who enjoyed fishing and bonfires. He will not soon be forgotten. I thank you for the lifetime of memories and the imprint you left on us. Rest in peace, Ian David Gux, or Gooks. I'm not really sure how to pronounce that. But this is a common posting I see over and over and over again. The guy who takes his life in a fraternity is the one who was popular, who was always happy, who was the most friendly. He actually may have been the social chair. There was a fraternity where I saw that. These are the guys who are always helping each other, and often the ones who are always helping and serving and making sure that everyone's okay. Those are the guys who were struggling and have a moment of hopelessness and take their own lives. There are about 5 key myths that are often associated with suicide. I want to talk about those really quickly, because if you're in a fraternity, you're at risk, and if you're in a fraternity that's predominantly white, you're at a higher risk because most suicides in this country, 70-80% of suicides in this country are white males. So if you're in an all-black fraternity, you're in a Hispanic fraternity, you're in a predominantly Asian fraternity, this isn't so much an issue for you. But if you're in a predominantly white fraternity, suicide, your fraternity chapter is at suicide risk, and we're seeing this across the country, even though a lot of universities don't seem to be paying too much attention to it. But these are 5 things that I think are really important. I'll post this article in the description below. The first is that male suicide is correlated with mental illness. And so often the knee-jerk reaction is we need to raise money for mental illness. Well, mental illness isn't always the cause of male suicide. Men find a moment of hopelessness, make a pretty rash decision, and take their own lives. And for most men, actually, it's 7 in 10 men who die by suicide had no history of any sort of mental illness at all. Now, that doesn't mean they didn't have it, but it wasn't reported. And so it's not great to always correlate mental health, mental illness with suicidal ideation and no longer wanting to be here. The second, and this is really, really important, of all the things we're going to talk about, it's probably the most important, is like when to pay attention to guys. 62% of all male suicides under the age of 30 happen because of relationship problems. Now, it is really extraordinary to me. It is really, really extraordinary that breaking up with your girlfriend can make you want to die. Now, for those of us that have had breakups, I understand the emotion of that. But 62% of suicides are associated with relationship problems. So when your brother breaks up with his girlfriend, pay attention to him. Sit close to him, ask him what he's thinking, ask him how he's feeling. You got to get in there and let him talk that out. For older men, it tends to be associated with divorce, but for younger guys, they just broke up, and he loses his sense of wanting to be here, and hopelessness tends to creep in. So it's really, really important to pay attention to relationships. Thirdly, most men who commit suicide, they successfully, that was the first time they ever tried it. So men are incredibly successful at taking very violent means of committing suicide and taking their own lives. So we see this again and again and again. And so it's really, really important to know that it wasn't like, and this is related to the next myth, number 4, they had a history of suicide attempts. That's typically not what happens. They had a bad moment, and they wanted out, and they took action and took their own lives. The last myth here is that men who are getting mental health help, guys who are currently in counseling and therapy, are immune from suicide. That doesn't happen. I've seen several stories of guys who took their lives and they were seeing somebody and seeing a therapist. So it's very complicated. It's very, very complex, but it is rising in epidemic numbers right now across college campuses. And I was hoping this was going to be the year where we wouldn't have any fraternity suicides, and the school year just started and we've already had one. So the one thing that I tell brothers across the country when I travel and speak of fraternities is, hey, you got to take care of each other, and you have to create a culture in your fraternity where it's okay to not be okay. And you don't have to always smile and be in a good mood and be the life of the party and always be up. It's okay to not be okay. I mean, there are some fraternities, I think Chi Psi is one of them, where they have something called a gentleman's club, where once a week a bunch of guys get together and just check in with each other. There's no program, there's no agenda. It's just guys sharing the good, the bad, the ugly, and to check in on each other, because it's a matter of life and death. I mean, guys are losing hope and losing their lives, and this is exactly what fraternities are meant to be about, right? Providing context for men to thrive and live well. And it is right at that intersection where there's a lot of destruction right now. So, guys, there's a war going on. There's a war going on to take the lives of fraternity men, and universities, for some reason, don't seem to be paying too much attention. So, guys, we have to do it ourselves, right? I'm inviting you guys to really talk about this in your chapter. Talk about ways that you can support each other. Don't assume that everybody's okay. Everybody's got struggles. Everybody has struggles. And you want your fraternity to be a place where guys can talk about this, so we can eradicate and eliminate fraternities posting on Instagram about guys who took their lives. I do want to give a shout out to Chi Psi at the University of South Carolina for having the courage to even tell the truth. It's really important to get these stories out because it can really facilitate a good conversation on your campus. And I hope that all the fraternities in the IFC at the University of South Carolina had a pause, and in every chapter and in every fraternity, they were able to talk about each other's mental health and ways in which they can pursue each other so that hopelessness does not creep into anybody's story and cause him to eliminate himself. So that's the one thing I would say. Guys, take care of each other, and do whatever you can to make sure that a guy isn't isolated in his own thoughts, and struggling with hopelessness, because the end result can often be really, really tragic.